Olin Foundation, Incorporated, Laurel Foundation, Atlantic Richfield, and the Friends of Firing Line.
We're in the heart of Texas, in Dallas, to share an hour with the Governor, Mark White. The eyes of political demographers from coast to coast are trained here to see what happens in 1986 and finally in 1988, because if true realignment comes to the South, it is likeliest to come, in the opinion of many, first here in Texas. What happened was that in 1982 there was a Democratic sweep led by Mark White. It looked as though the inroads of Republicans into Texas politics had been arrested. But 1982 was the year of the Great Post-War Depression, and by 1984 things had changed. The symbol of that change was Phil Gramm's, a professor of economics at Texas A&M, who had been elected to Congress as a Democrat, crossed ranks into the Republican Party, and was nominated for the Senate to succeed retiring Senator John Tower. He faced a prominent liberal and beat him decisively. With the heavy majority for Ronald Reagan, it was a Republican year. What they are saying here in Texas is that the Anglos, as they refer to the non-Hispanic Texans, outnumber the blacks and the browns, and that rural conservatives combined with business conservatives and the 25% upper income Hispanics who are Republicans suggests that the end of the line is coming for liberal Democrats, becoming a powerful political force. Well, we are here to talk to Mark White, who is a central figure in this political drama. He has many problems, perhaps foremost of them the sharp drop in income from oil, which brought 30% of state revenues when he was elected and only 20% now. How to raise more money. He excited national attention by his education bill, which included the famous no pass, no play provision, as it is called. Flunk a subject and get suspended from extracurricular activities for 6 weeks. Not a bit popular with those who look to high schools primarily as a source of athletic entertainment. Mark White, educated at Baylor University, where he also got his law degree, a Baptist, a Democratic moderate, will run for re-election, it is said, without the enthusiastic backing of Democratic left-wingers, but they know better after 1984 than to challenge him. Among other things, he may go on to be a candidate for the Democratic presidential nomination in 1988. Meanwhile, the race for a Republican successor is being fought by three contenders. Our examiner will be Mr. William Murchison, the syndicated columnist and editorial writer for the Dallas Morning News, about whom more in due course. I'd like to begin by asking Governor White to tell us why his education bill, considered by some the landmark achievement of his administration, has been so controversial, particularly among teachers.
Well, I think that in Texas, with, as you pointed out, Bill, with the declining revenues from oil and gas, we're going to have to get smart and not just strong. And I think that it's important when you make dramatic changes in an educational system that's been pretty much in place for 20, 30, 40 years, a system that has grown mediocre more each day. We are asking for increased standards for teachers as well as students. That anytime you make those dramatic changes in an institution, you cause some upset. But I'm pleased to get the reports today from teachers who have now been in the system for a little over a year that this is their best year, that the reforms are working, that the students are studying harder and doing better. And that's exactly what we hoped would occur. We had seen a lack of focus on educational quality, and I think we're turning that around now.
Well, let me ask you this, Governor. Having applied these tests to probe the continuing proficiency of teachers, did it result in a lot of them having to drop out?
Well, we haven't really applied the test. The test will come in March of next year. And it's a test just to test basic skills. skills in communication. I think you'll find that most of our teachers will pass. They're given an opportunity to be retested should they fail. And ultimately, however, if they're unable to accomplish the test, then they will not be permitted in the classroom. But I think the bulk of our teachers are of the first quality. I think they have been looking for a center of excellence that they can focus on and that they can adhere to. They are looking for leadership in this area as well. And I think that they'll find that the bulk of those teachers support the higher standards for teachers and obviously for students.
Well, Governor, you've been traveling a lot, and the issues that you confront in Texas are most of them national issues. True that Texas has individual problems, as every state has its individual problems. In your case, the decrease in the value of your oil revenues. But the distress of educational standards is a coast-to-coast problem. Do you intend to make this a national campaign, or are you going to concentrate primarily on the problems of Texas?
Well, Texas is a big enough job.
Yeah, it is.
And,
well,
and if we get that job done here, I'll be satisfied. I think it'll also be used as an example in other states. And let me say, the governors across the nation today, the Bill Clintons in Arkansas, the William Winters in Mississippi, Riley in South Carolina, Hunt in North Carolina, Robb in Virginia, all across the United States today are taking the lead in educational reform. And many of the things you see in our Texas educational plan, we copied from other states, but we did take from those, learn from those, and then we added our own particular Texas brand of quality. We're searching for one goal, that's being number one. And I think we now have the highest standard for passing to participate in extracurricular activities of any state in the nation.
Well, let me ask you this. Given that Texas has a tradition of experimentation and of a high regard for the individual, have you in your past ever reflected on, and if so, have you backed the idea of vouchers that would make it possible for parents to send their children to schools in which they experiment, among other things, with higher standards?
Well, I think what we've done, the voucher system that you speak of is one that's been voiced by others. I don't know if it's been tried particularly with success in any other place, but what we're trying to do is to say we're raising the standard for all of them. We don't want to leave any child behind. There's no excuse in this country for us to have a child anywhere in the poorest district or in the richest that is not going to be afforded an opportunity at quality. And I think that's the way we should develop it. The voucher system is an experiment that I'm not certain of.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think most people are accustomed to the rhetoric that says all children should have an equal opportunity. I am, and I endorse it as you do. But it's also true that the presumption, the egalitarian presumption in America tends sometimes to transcend the notion of opportunity and ends up saying that everybody should receive a diploma, irrespective of how he performs.
You're exactly right, Bill, and that's the frustration we've had in Texas. We've done away with social promotion. The business of getting older doesn't necessarily mean you've gotten smarter. And as a result, we're requiring testing in the levels throughout our elementary schools as well as in our junior schools. And you won't get a diploma in Texas unless you pass the ultimate test in that 11th year, that 12th year. And that's for the child that's in the Dallas Highland Park School District or the La Jolla Independent School District down in the Rio Grande Valley. For that reason, because we've placed these uniform standards in our system, we are now going back to see that no child is left behind. Mm-hmm. And I want to stress one of the programs, one of the problems we have in Texas is the question of bilingual education. We have a complex population makeup in Texas, and I was just down in South Texas in La Jolla Independent School District this past summer looking at a model program that we've just put in place. It's statewide to take care of the problems of children who come into our system not knowing English, not being able to communicate in English. Also for those lower economic class students that are going to have difficulty because of a lack of support maybe at the home or in society generally. To take those 4-year-olds and start off training them in English instantly. They speak Spanish for a couple of weeks to get them acclimated to the classroom. This is their first time away from home in a Spanish-speaking environment, And we wind up bringing that child into an English-speaking environment very quickly. And that child becomes productive in English and becomes proficient in English. And then we have an added dimension that I think has been overlooked. America has been kind of an arrogant society in the sense that we expect everyone to speak English. And fortunately, many of them do. But we're in a global economy today, and we're in a competition with countries around the world that English is their second language. Texas is associated with Mexico and Central America and South America. We'll have an added attraction and asset here. With that young child, in all likelihood, will continue the ability to speak in Spanish. But we're going to require the ability to speak in English.
Well,
and I think that will give us an asset in that child in years to come in building economic bridges with the Spanish-speaking world.
Well, I agree with you, and as we both know, the failure to do this in Canada very nearly resulted in a drastic separatism only a few years ago. But it's also true, isn't it, that there is very considerable political opposition to this. When a lot of people refer to bilingual education, they really refer to continuing education in Spanish, with English as more or less an abstract alternative. Whereas what you're talking about is a required fluency in English with the other language and auxiliary.
Well, let me say we have an English as a second language program in Texas.
Yeah.
We have a bilingual education program in Texas for those young children going through those early years that aren't English proficient. And then we've added this new English proficiency program for the 4-year-olds. So we don't leave anybody behind without regard to what age they may be when we made changes in the system. Just putting in the 4-year-old program doesn't help the 6-year-old. They've already moved past that program. So we have a program for English as a second language, which is designed primarily for those middle school and senior high school students. You know, we have a tough enough time finding a physics teacher in English. To find a bilingually trained physics teacher is a tremendous burden. Those are the classes where we have specific subject matter instruction. The bilingual program works much better through the elementary school years, where the elementary teacher is teaching all the subjects to that child. And those programs are going to be helpful in trying to be transitional, to move them into English.
And you're not facing opposition to that?
The program that we have adopted in Texas was, I believe, unanimously supported by every Mexican-American political association in the state. We passed it when I was Attorney General. It was drafted by me in the Attorney General's office and members of my staff. We have enhanced it in the governor's office and improved the funding for those programs. But I am cheered by the fact that we are seeing the excitement in the eyes of young people going to school. And one of the dropout problems, I submit to you, has been the fact that a young person who doesn't do well in school soon gets a defeatist attitude and learns to accept failure, and soon becomes one of those people who says,
perpetually demoralized. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we've done that and permitted that to happen in the country and many places, and I don't think we can afford that today when we're in such tough competition with Japan, Germany, France, Russia, China, all other developing countries around the world.
Oh, yeah, I saw a report as recently as a couple of days ago by James Jackson Kilpatrick, who just spent a week in Japan, and he points out, for instance, that they have to start learning English at age 6, whereas 35 states in America don't require a second language at all, and those of them that do don't require it until you're the first year in high school, when it becomes much more difficult to learn it. He also pointed out that here students go from 8:30 to 3 typically. There they go from 8:30 until 5, and here we have 180 days of schooling. There they have 250 days of schooling. So we got a lot to learn from our but let's turn a moment non-invidiously to politics. Most people agree that something isn't working in Congress, and in searching for explanations, again, that aren't invidious, some people point out to certain anomalies. In 1984, the 59% of the American people voted for Reagan, as you know, and the Senate reflects this Republican percentage. At a popular level, there were 62,500,000 votes cast, and the Democrats exceeded the Republicans by about 100,000 votes, i.e. trivially. But they have 70 more votes in Congress. Now, would you, as a practicing politician interested in theory, suggest that the failure accurately to transcribe an apparent mandate in 1984 can be the cause of this constipated Congress that we are all frustrated by?
Well, I'm not going to diagnose the Congress along those lines, but I do think that we had a very popular candidate for president in Ronald Reagan, obviously. We had a larger percentage of votes in Texas than was attributed to him nationally. But I don't think that the popularity of the president is necessarily reflected as the popularity of the Republican Party. I think he far exceeds the popularity of the party.
Yeah, but it's also true, isn't it, that after the 1980 census there was massive gerrymandering going along. There is no reason to suppose that the identical voter so thoroughly attracted to Mr. Reagan over against Mr. Mondale would suddenly schizophrenically reverse himself when he's talking about Democratic or Republican alternatives for Congress. And surely there must be some suggestion that that gerrymandering resulted in distortions in California, for instance, in Ohio,
Well,
for all I know in your own state.
Well, I think that you'll find that the same year that Ronald Reagan was getting elected on a statewide basis in Texas, we had Democratic railroad commissioners getting elected here. And I think that what we see, the election for president shouldn't necessarily set the boundary lines for our Congress. There's two separate institutions.
No, it shouldn't necessarily, and we grant that we frequently have states in which one senator is Republican, as here, and one senator is a Democrat. But it seems to be true, at least I haven't seen it denied, that gerrymandering is playing an important role in distorting.
Bill, gerrymandering is exactly what happens when the other side has the pencil.
Mm-hmm, right.
In any case, if you lose, you call it gerrymandering. The other side says it's fair and equitable, one man, one vote principles fairly applied.
Well, have you taken a position on the Indiana case?
I have not. I rather doubt that I will.
Well, the Supreme Court some time ago arrogated the authority to insist on one man, one vote, at least in the House of Representatives. They'd have to do away with the Senate to apply that impartially.
They opened Pandora's box.
That's right. Yeah, they did. But it may very well be that if that Indiana suit results in illegitimizing the action taken there, that it would have consequences that would result in redesigning those districts so that you wouldn't be able to abuse the power of the pencil if you were the party in power.
Well, here again, I'm not familiar with the Indiana case, but we went through a redistricting battle here in Texas with a Republican governor, Democratic legislature, and wound up in court as well. We had to continue to go back, and we ultimately passed legislation that was upheld by the courts. The Democrats, well, let me say, the Republicans in Texas, I think, thought back in 1982 when I was elected that they were going to pick up 3 seats in the Congress here in Texas. They didn't. All 3 of the seats that they had planned to pick up, Amarillo, Lubbock, and the mid-cities area here between Dallas and Fort Worth, were Democratic seats. In 1984, they did pick up those seats. And, but they did it under a very unusual circumstance. Take, for example, the case in the Panhandle. The congressman there, Jack Hightower, Democratic congressman, lost to his opponent by about 6 points, 53% to 47%. Yet in order for him to lose by 6 points, Ronald Reagan was winning by 50 points in the district. So had Ronald Reagan just lost or won by 43 points, you still wouldn't have had a change in the Congress.
Well, assuming that pari passu, he piggybacked on Reagan.
Well, there was a piggyback.
Yeah, but
this individual, we have a straight party lever in Texas. I'm not sure that they do in Indiana, but you can say as you walk into the ballot box, and I'm going to vote for all the Republicans, and just push one button, and you've just voted for everybody down the line.
So everybody who wanted the Democrat had to make an obvious, emphatic gesture.
They had to move over.
Sure, right. Well, let me ask you to comment on this, because I think it bears directly on a subject that interests both of us. A few days after the San Francisco convention, the Washington Post published a poll which had been taken of the delegates in San Francisco, and alongside it a poll that had been taken of Democratic voters from coast to coast. And they found huge discrepancies. I remember one, for instance, abortion. 53% of American Democrats opposed abortion. 3% of the delegates in San Francisco opposed abortion. The other differences may not have been as polarized, but they were very significant, which seems to be saying that the American primary system is working in such a way as to send to the Democratic nominating conventions people who are ideologically to the left of the mainstream of Democrats. Now, you did your loyal
That's my
best.
exception.
Well,
And a few others of us.
yeah, well, but you were a very loyal. You were a very loyal member of the team in backing Mondale with, I hope, less enthusiasm than you internally felt. But aren't you organizationally and systematically ill at ease with a crystallizing process that seems to say any Democrat who wants to be elected president is going to lose in the primaries, because the ideologically motivated tend to crowd out the mainstream?
Well, I think the democratic process has been flawed for quite some time in the way in which we go about selecting our candidates.
How would you amend it?
Well, just let the people speak more carefully about that and more generally about it. And I think that's the magic of the Democratic Party. And we seem to be doing quite well as Democrats throughout the states. 35, I believe it is, of all the governors of the states are Democrats. And it doesn't take a mathematician very long to figure out if all 35 of those Democratic-led states were to vote for the Democratic nominee for the presidency, then there would almost always be a Democratic president. Yet it seems that we have been unable to accomplish that. And I think there's several reasons for that. One particularly, I think, is that the Democratic states, the governors of the Democratic states are elected through generally open primary processes. That requires them to be out on the stump, so to speak, talking about issues that the people are interested in, generally. And they're successful by that same ratio. But we don't do that. We have a much narrower process. We let New Hampshire set the tone. New Hampshire doesn't vote Democratic. We let New Hampshire set the tone for the Democratic nomination. And you go up there, and some poor candidate runs through New Hampshire, and if he loses that, they all at once, the press says, well, he's no longer a viable candidate.
Yeah.
I think that's a tragic mistake we make, and that's the reason I'm supporting a movement of primarily states throughout the South and West to move our primaries up to an earlier period in time, so that we'll be having the candidates come to Texas and have them coming to Florida and California earlier in the process. And I think that broadens and makes for a more effective candidacy.
Well, let me ask you this. Is there a higher percentage of voters who participate in gubernatorial primaries than in presidential primaries?
Well,
as a result of this familiarity you speak of?
Historically, our primaries, we have a primary date for certain officials on the presidential election date, but we did move gubernatorial races to the midterm of the presidential races, so we no longer have that confluence of elections. And I think that in this case, you would get a big turnout. Candidates, you go to the polls for the same reason you go to any other event. You get excited about it. You get, you go to the football game. The one that's exciting is the one you go to. You don't go to the one that has no appeal, and you go to those elections that become exciting.
Yeah, but isn't it the case then that where you have people competing for the presidency, you have an electoral fever that doesn't attach to any other contest? For instance, take this year. The only contests that we read about in my part of the world are the governor of New Jersey, the mayor of New York, and because I happen to live there, the mayor of Stamford. Now, that really doesn't electrify the people of Texas. And as a matter of fact, it doesn't electrify the people of New Jersey. Doesn't it follow that you need something of the enthusiasm of presidential politics to lift the ratio of participating voters? And if you don't lift it, who is it who goes out and vote? Primarily the ideologues.
Well, that's probably so. I can't disagree with what you say there. I think that,
so is there any way to correct that?
Well, I think that's the candidate's responsibility. I mean, if the candidates are not developing issues that people are interested in, you know, I've always viewed that as partly the candidate's responsibility. You can sit around in a classroom all day and debate the issues of voter turnout, but if it's not a hot campaign and a hot contest, you know, there's nothing better than a good hot sheriff's race in East Texas to get people to go vote.
Yeah, that's right. Of course, what I'm saying is really an admission against interest, because I'm a profiteer of the existing quandary that you're in. That is to say, as far as I can see, Republicans are going to win forever, because the Democrats are going to go out there and nominate Ella Abzug for president.
Are you a Republican?
Am I a Republican? Yes. Oh yes, yeah, I'm very well educated. And now
that's no requirement down here, you understand.
Interesting. Well, it will be after your system has been consolidated. Interesting enough, Reagan was very forthright in his positions, and for a number of years, as we both know, and he did attract a majority even in the primaries and in the election. But the Democrats, it seems to me, are at some point going to face, as they have surreptitiously discussed, what are we going to do about a primary system that keeps saddling us with special interest candidates? They raise the money, they get the organization, they get the free rides to the polls, they get the telephone calls, the telegrams of pressure, and it results in a very signal distortion of a kind measured by the Washington Post when it compared the people in San Francisco who were nominating the next slate over against the Democrats who vote for the party.
Well, I think that, you know, one of these days, national Democrats will get tired of losing. We got tired of losing in Texas one time here not too long ago, and we haven't let that happen again.
Okay, well,
and it tends to unite people if they're really interested in the ability to move public policy as opposed to enunciate a private issue or some narrow issue. And I think that that's a responsibility of a candidate, of bringing people together with a vision grander and larger than the ones of any single constituency.
Sure, but now, perhaps in Texas, it can be controlled, because Texas has a reputation.
Texas is out of control always.
Well, no, I say perhaps in Texas it can be controlled, because Texas has a reputation for being so extraordinarily munificent in its backing of individual candidates. But some people in some states don't need the kind of big bucks that you need in Texas to announce your name. And so that a very left-wing candidate in Texas, after the lessons of 1984, might simply not stand a good chance of winning a nomination because he can't raise the money. Now, is that what's going to bring a sense of sobriety, the actual backing, the money backing of a candidate?
Well, I don't know of very many successful candidates that aren't concerned about where the finances are going to be coming from, but at the same time, I don't think that has to necessarily force them into a position of pandering their positions on issues.
Well, it's not necessarily pandering. It's advertising reasons why people ought to vote for them, and those reasons aren't by any means necessarily commercial, but they are advertising, they're asking for money from a lot of people. Somebody once, in a post-mortem on Barry Goldwater's 1964 election, found out that the overwhelming majority of the contributions to the Goldwater campaign were between $5 and $10, in part because of Reagan's very successful appeals. So I guess what I'm asking is Texas unique in that you see a self-corrective mechanism working here that wouldn't necessarily work in Illinois or Florida or New York?
Well, I'm not that familiar with those other states and really feel a little bit inhibited to make a comment about them, but I think that the candidate has a responsibility to help define the issues as well and not just be a reflection of one or two special interest groups. And I think that was a mistake that has been made in the past, and it's been debated and books have been written about it. It's happened more than once to the Democratic Party. And I think that you have to recognize Ronald Reagan is a special person in attracting attention and being able to mold public opinion. He is a talent that everyone has acknowledged.
Yeah, the reason I smile is that everybody was saying about Ronald Reagan 6, 7 years ago, he was a special person in that he was uniquely disqualified to run successfly. Everybody was saying, God, I hope it's Reagan they nominate because we'll kill him. You remember that? That
I never said that.
In 80. But a lot of people did.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, they decided that he was very successful. What they don't want to say is that he's successful because he's saying certain things. They'd much rather simply say that he says them so well, he's a great communicator. But it may very well be that the American people want us to head in a different direction. Now, if they do, if that's correct, to what extent is it a responsibility of the Democratic Party to heed that particular voice and mutatis mutandis move in the same direction?
Well, I think that that's one of the things that caught up the Democratic nominee is the way in which they went about trying to show direction for the country. We're sitting here today, and I think everyone acknowledges the largest problem we face in the nation today is an unbalanced budget. Yet we have a president who promised a balanced budget. Promised us one. What, within 3 years?
Well, it was about the same time that Jimmy Carter promised.
Well, I'm not debating over who completed the pass. I'm just saying that there have been passes made.
Yeah.
The point I would make in this case, though, Bill, is that we have a president who's never submitted a balanced budget to the Congress. And as a governor of a state that's required to have a balanced budget, I have sent a balanced budget to our legislature every time. We have balanced the budget every time. There's no magic to it. It's, you know, how much income balanced with the outgo.
Well, there's a certain amount of magic to it. Nelson Rockefeller lived in a state that required a balanced budget, but of course not for capital expenditures. So the trick is to, every time you start a McDonald's hamburger stand, to call it a capital expenditure.
No, we don't play that trick here.
Well, I hope you don't. But it's also true, isn't it, that Ronald Reagan is the only president in recent history who's come out for an amendment that would require balancing the budget.
Well, I appreciate that, and I support that program in the sense that the president doesn't have to wait for that amendment to be passed before he sends the balanced budget to the Congress.
Yeah.
And I find it to be the height of
well, one of the great cliches is that Reagan hasn't submitted a balanced budget. But let me advise you of this rather important distinction. Number one, he never said that he was going to trim expenditures. He said we need 6.6% of our gross national product going to defense. We're actually going to spend less on defense than Walter Mondale said we should. He said we should go up 4%. Nixon said we should go up, Reagan said we should go up 6%. We're going up 0%.
So that still doesn't deal with the problem,
now, wait a minute.
Bill.
Number one, so therefore defense is on one side. Entitlements, he can't fuss with, only Congress can. He has submitted a balanced budget in all other departments.
Well, somehow or another, then we've lost our track because there's been a $1 trillion added to the deficit since he's been president and doubled the amount of the national debt. And every person I spoke to in Japan and every person I spoke to a couple of weeks ago in New York who are major business interests, all focused on the fact that we have a deficit that's out of control, that has precipitated unreasonably large interest rates, high interest rates, that have hurt our balance of trade, and as a result we're not playing on a level field. Example, Japan, its interest prime rate around 5%. Ours 9.5%. Well, it doesn't take a magician very long to figure that a businessman in Texas or the United States is at a disadvantage to a Japanese businessman in the same
You can go further
circumstance.
and say the Japanese save 18% of their income. We save less than
That's
6.
right.
So there's no
We should have a tax plan that provides incentives for savings.
Agreed.
And we also have one that provides incentives for production of oil and gas. And we have an administration there in Washington today that I support in their national defense efforts. The M1 tank and the B-1 bomber.
You support it.
I support those.
Yeah.
But they don't make it without fuel.
No, I agree. And I think that Mr. Reagan should use the veto power much more extensively than he has, and that he threatens to lose credibility unless he does. He has, as you know, asked for the line item veto, which has been denied him.
Well, let me tell you my experience with that.
You have it, don't you?
We have a line item
Sure.
veto down here, and the legislature very courageously hides their pet projects into projects that are difficult to veto. And
how do you handle that?
well, you go in there and try to work in the legislature to dig that out, but they're very jealous of their prerogatives to appropriate the funds for the executive branch, and they are very cautious about it. I did veto several measures this past time, but they are artful in handling that.
Yeah.
And I think they'd be just as artful in the Congress, if not more so.
I think so, and I think the great symbolic capitulation of Ronald Reagan was on the matter of Social Security. Because if you can't touch Social Security, why should you touch other things? And yet 70% of the people who receive Social Security are in the middle income bracket. And the fact that longevity is contributing so much, the geriatrics is contributing so much to longevity, we are every year extending the length of period towards which people who are working are supporting people who are not working. So to treat Social Security as though with a shroud of Turin, that you can't simply touch it without defacing it, is a very bad philosophical mistake, I think.
Well, he made that promise.
I know I did. He did it when 100 out of 100 senators rebuked him because he experimented with the proposal of David Stockman 2 or 3 weeks into his particular term. But he made a solemn promise he wasn't going to touch Social Security, and I think it's a mistake. If it's untouchable, why shouldn't all other things be untouchable?
Well, we have to balance the budget.
Yeah, that's
somewhere
right.
along the road.
We have to balance budget. Or
at least get it under control, deficits under control, and I think there are ways that can be done without touching Social Security. That was a promise that was made and a commitment that has to be kept. I believe that we can make strong steps toward a balanced budget by taking courageous action both in the executive branch as well as the congressional and legislative branch.
Well, do you think that we are on the eve of a Democratic Party which has all of a sudden recognized for the first time in 2 generations the dangers in deficit spending, which will actually take the lead in advocating husbandry in Washington? Is that one of the things that's got to happen?
I'm not certain that can be done, but the deficits are much greater today in this administration than ever in the past, and has provoked problems for our economy.
Reagan is spending more money than any president in the history of the world. The only thing he's done is slowed the rate of growth.
But the rate of growth was slowed with an increasing deficit, and I'm not sure that the deficit isn't the bigger problem.
Well,
if you're financing your growth out of current income, then you don't have the same burden on the future that you place on it with the deficit that's been created. The deficit, I don't know of a soul, from Paul Volcker to Jim Baker to any other person in the administration that's spoken on the issue, that doesn't acquaint the deficit as being the biggest problem we face in the country. The only place that can be solved is in the Congress and in the White House.
That's right. That's right. And of course, the only absolutism in Reagan is the way to solve it is not to increase taxes, because if we did that, we're going to have a sclerotic effect on American activity, and I think recent experience tends to suggest that he might be correct there.
Well, let me say that our tax policy under this administration has created much of the deficit. The reduction in tax did not yield the hoped for increase in revenue.
You don't know that?
I don't know that?
No, we don't know that.
Well, there's $1 trillion in new deficit out there that is almost directly tied to the tax cut.
There was also, in 1982, the worst depression in post-war history, which was not predicted by any Democrat that I know of, by any Democratic economist that I know of, or by any Republican economist that I know of. And that cost us, by minimal reckoning, something on the order of $150 billion. We also had an increased tax of $92 billion in 1982, for which Congress promised that there would be a $3 reduction for every dollar in tax. It resulted in a 60-cent reduction in expenses. So that Congress hasn't lived up to its set of responsibilities.
I think the major problem we had with our tax cut was that we did not focus those tax cuts on recapitalization in the country. Very easily could have told a company to qualify for the tax cuts, you have to reinvest in new capital investment in the country.
Yeah.
We didn't do that, and so much of that tax cut went overseas with jobs following it. And I think that was a tragic mistake. And also they used the tax cut to buy each other out, which didn't create any new jobs for anyone except maybe a lawyer or two.
Oh, no, there have been a tremendous number of new jobs created during the past 8 years.
Oh, I understand that, but not through that.
650,000 enterprises just last year began.
Well, think how many more we would have had if we had not permitted all of the purchase of each other.
Sure.
We didn't drill a new oil well.
We would have had if we had limited the top tax to 25%.
Well, let me say this. I think we've, in some cases, as I was sitting by one of the corporate executives of a major corporation in the nation, said, we didn't pay any taxes last year, but the lady who just served you your lunch did. She paid more taxes than we did.
Well, I think
that's not a fair tax system.
I think it is.
Do you do?
Well, I think it's ridiculous for businesses to pay any tax at all. They just become an agent of IRS. What businesses should do is make their products cheaper. That's the way to help.
You are a Republican.
Yeah, sure, sure. I certainly am. And Mr. Reagan at one point said that he didn't see any point in a business tax. Neither do I. It's just simply a way of fooling yourself that you're relieving him, you, the waitress, of a burden by simply passing it along to a corporation which simply raises its prices and gets it from you, me, and the waitress.
Well, you have a choice there. You don't have to buy that product.
Well, it depends on whether there's a fixed demand for it. If there's a flexible demand, then you don't have to buy it.
That's right.
But that's in any case, I think we should introduce our distinguished examiner, Mr. Murkison, who is, as I said, a syndicated columnist with the Dallas Morning News, a graduate of the University of Texas, who has an MA from Stanford University and is doing doctoral work at the University of Texas. Ms. Bergson.
We've heard from Governor White a great many strictures on President Reagan's disregard of the deficit and his failure to address same. I wonder how really useful this is as an issue to the Democrats. You touched on this to some degree, but is it not true that the entitlements programs, which are driving the deficit to greater and greater heights, were enacted by Democratic legislatures? Is it not, Democratic Congresses, I mean? Is it not true that that Mr. Reagan came into this deficit game rather late, and while he perhaps has not acted as strenuously as many of us would like in controlling the deficit, do the Democrats really have that much grounds to feel virtuous?
Well, I think you'll have to remind your listeners that the last balanced budget we had was in a Democratic administration with a Democratic-controlled Congress. But that's no great shakes. We have gone a long ways since then.
But wasn't that about the instrumentality of merging the Social Security Trust Fund with the budget?
Well, this administration has never been never failed to take advantage of a little deft of hand in the accounting system. But I think that what we have to recognize is the deficit has doubled since 1980. Doubled. Went from $1 trillion to $2 trillion in the 5 years of this administration. And let me say, there's a Republican Senate that's been there for a significant portion of this administration that could have blocked those spending proposals if they felt necessary, and they could have taken action to make certain that no spending would be done that would be excessive, but they didn't.
Well, let's talk about one instance of those spending programs, and that's Social Security. Isn't it true that every time President Reagan or any other Republican, for that matter, talks about modifying the increases in Social Security, that he is immediately leapt upon by the Democrats and called a ravager of...
From the president's own mouth, he promised not to hurt Social Security. That was his promise.
Yeah, it was a reaction to the savagery with which he was treated by people who suggested that he hated old people.
Well, I had nothing to do with that, but it was his promise from his mouth that said that he was not going to hurt Social Security.
Well, I'll quote Jimmy Wright, your distinguished congressman here, who said, "Don't you understand? The President of the United States has declared war on old folks."
Well, there are some old folks that felt that, I'm sure. They view that Social Security check as their only opportunity at economic survival. And many of those people were faced with, and still continue to face.
Look, exactly what you just finished saying,
problems.
you can say about every single expenditure, which you're just not complaining about.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that there's some areas in there that you can be more flexible, and I don't think that you need to see an increase of $1 trillion in our deficit brought about by a change in our taxing structure that could have been focused to productivity. Make them qualify for tax cuts just like they qualify for an investment tax credit.
Well,
productive capacity in this country is diminished.
We've started taxing Social Security over $30,000 under Reagan, haven't we? It was a joint, it was a bipartisan agreement.
Oh yes, there were changes in that, no question about it, in order to keep a solvent system.
Right.
That was known as the...
It's still insolvent.
Well, it's not so much as it would have been.
Okay. Governor, I have another question I want to address to you. As you well know, the Democratic Party in Texas was stalwartly and resolutely conservative for most of the 20th century. And I wonder in what realistic sense it's possible to talk about the present Democratic Party as conservative. Now you, I know, have conservative antecedents, and you were supported by many conservatives when you were elected. At the same time, most of the statewide office holders who were elected in 1982 are not conservatives. You seem to be hanging out there on a conservative limb in a rather lonely fashion. I wonder if in some sense you are the last of the conservative or moderate conservative governors of Texas, perhaps even the last centrist governors of Texas. Is the Democratic Party henceforth a liberal party in Texas?
Well, I think not. I think that even as one of the Republican senators said during a special session of the legislature on indigent health care, that you can be a conservative, that doesn't mean you have to be stupid. And I think that...
it helps, huh?
Well, in this, there were a few there that fell into the stupid category, I know, but we see, I think, in Texas, the fact that Democrats in this state have brought about the progress that we've made in this state. We've had one Republican governor in 100 years, 105 years, and I think that's often enough.
Well, they're coming back at you next year, as you doubtless know.
Well, I understand, but they can all afford the filing fee and even more. But I think what you see is that Texans vote for the individual. They vote for the person who speaks and enunciates their goals and hopes for the future.
And he just happens to be a Democrat.
And he happens to be a Democrat, and has been through the years.
But of course, you note the increasing number of votes that Republicans get around the state, the increase in the number of Republican congressmen, the fact that, well, you alluded early on to the fact that you elected a Democratic railroad commissioner in 1982, which is quite true. But what we have to point out also is that the Republican candidate was a virtual unknown, a man in his 70s, I believe.
He had two bumper stickers, and they're both on his car.
And you almost lost the race for state Supreme Court Chief Justice. And are not the Republicans making the kind of inroads in Texas?
Oh, I think what you're seeing today is that many people, much of that in-migration to the state has been in-migration of people who had been voting Republican in other parts of the country. And they come here thinking that Democrats are all liberal and Republicans are all conservative, and I think that's a terrible mistake. Maybe we didn't spend enough time converting them as they came across the Red River, and that may be the Democrats' fault. But the Democratic Party, and you're looking at the most conservative, fiscally conservative governor in Texas in many, many years. The spending patterns of my predecessor were 20 and 25% increases in expenditures. Mine, this past biennium, was some 6% increase over the prior biennium. And I think what you find as time goes by, more and more people are going to learn in a governor's race, the debate that comes up. Well, I may be a Republican, but I'm going to vote for this fellow over here because he's talking about the future of this state, not about the past.
Well, Governor, aren't you being really a little bit glib historically here, because you talk about one Republican in 100 years. The fact of the matter is that a great historical accident resulted in this terminological confusion. Well, one reads about the man who gives a speech and saying, I live an Englishman, I was born an Englishman, I live in England, I hope to die an Englishman. And the voice from the rear of the room says, "Man, have you no ambition?" And if you fed a Rorschach test to the average Democratic Southerner, you would find that he's probably more Republican than most Northern Republicans. So that you are, as I say, beneficiaries of a great historical anomaly that traces to the Civil War.
Well, I think well, that's true, but I think you also have to recognize that Democratic leadership, particularly in Texas, has been based on economic opportunity, principles that I think Democrats have been espousing through their historical past, that grows directly from the philosophy of Jefferson. And I think that it's been well received. It's populistic in some ways, but...
Sure, but when those are most clearly enunciated, which is in presidential candidates, they've been going Republican for a long, long time, haven't they? They had a little recidivism for Lyndon Johnson, but before that they voted for Eisenhower, and since then they voted for Nixon.
Well, maybe that should be a lesson to the National Democratic Party and not a reason for changing Texas.
Yeah.
And I think certainly Texas is in the right position. The Democratic Party in Texas is broad-based, as the Democratic Party is supposed to be. If we were just a narrow group of financiers, as opposed to, or
which you're not.
We're broad-based, and let me say, Bill, it's a wonderful thing to see that. I don't think it's wise for a party to isolate itself into a composite group that is of altogether alike thinking. What we need is a party, as a Democratic Party, that's going to be responsive to all the concerns. I have to, as governor of Texas, be concerned about that Hispanic little girl that's going to school in La Jolla, that black child in the inner city neighborhood, that kid that's playing at Highland Park on a football team, and I want him to pass. I have to be concerned with all those constituencies in order to be elected. But isn't that exactly what a nominee of a party ought to be concerned about, and shouldn't a party be addressing those issues?
It depends whether your concern for that constituency takes on an ideological character and actually stands in the way of your letting the majority of the people do what they have done traditionally in America, which is move every level of society up from poverty. 59% of the people voted for Ronald Reagan, notwithstanding that they were told by Walter Mondale that Ronald Reagan was the candidate of the rich people. Well, that must be a hell of a lot of rich people in this country, if indeed he was a candidate of the rich people.
Well, I think that what the Democratic Party has tried to do is to broaden that base, and I think the perception and the reality of the Republican Party has been a trickle-down theory that's been announced through the years and continues to be announced. I much prefer to see that child in that small inner-city school district promote a Barbara Jordan and a Henry Cisneros, and to see a Ross Perot out of Texarkana. Who could have picked these people?
Now, Governor, look, there were 650,000 new enterprises begun in America last year. Are you going to tell me that they all started because they had rich parents who trickled down their income?
No, they had good educations. And let me say this, that most of that new initiative was, much of that was done here in Texas, in Florida.
H.L. Hunt didn't have much of an education.
He had a very good eye for the geology of the eastern part of our state.
He was lucky, he was shrewd, yeah. That's right, he did. He was kind of a dowser.
Good luck is maybe better than anything
good luck,
else.
Sure, sure. But
today we don't have that opportunity to rely upon the good luck so much, and I think good education will be the better of the luck.
But yeah, people talk about trickle down. It's Ken Galbraith's favorite form of derogation. In the first place, I have no. If somebody wants to invent a transistor chip, I have no objection whatsoever to his making $1 billion out of it.
That's right.
And enriching all of us to the extent of $10 or whatever. If someone wants to invent the telephone, I don't care that he makes a lot of money of it, and that there's a trickle-down effect. But the fact of the matter is that as our economic load lightens, we assume the kind of economic independence which makes collateral and entrepreneurial activity possible.
Well, that's good if they'll invest in America, and I think what you're seeing, those people who have those opportunities to make
you don't
those
have to invest in America. You can invest anywhere you want.
I know, but I'd rather if you invest in America.
I don't think it matters that much, because if you invest in France because you can service American appetites at a cheaper rate, you are contributing to America as every bit as substantially.
Well, if you invest
Remember, 20% of Americans owe their jobs to the fact that they are selling goods abroad.
Well, I didn't say that we should set up any protective barriers. What I'm saying is that this country can no longer be strong economically if we don't have a viable steel industry, if we don't have a viable refining capacity. We've lost a third of our refining capacity in the last 5 years in this administration, and not a single bomb was dropped. You remember we won the Battle of North Africa.
What's the matter with our technology? Maybe not enough people are going to school.
Well, that's
Maybe
the point.
we're not advanced enough in our technological engineering.
That's the point here is...
Okay, you're doing something about that.
We are doing something about that.
But don't try to set up protectionism to protect the refinery.
I didn't set up protectionism.
No.
I'm saying that what you do is make it possible for American investors to invest in a country...
Okay, how do you do that?
By,
you lower the tax, don't you?
Well, you don't do it mindlessly. And I think we have seen that occur.
Except write books.
Well, I think that if you would lower the tax and then see all of the revenues from that lower tax move to an offshore investment, we could have maximized that tax
Why would
reduction.
they move to an offshore place if they can stand to get equal benefits by investing here?
Well, possibly because
a lot of foreigners investing here because they find it more possible to do so.
For other reasons.
Interest in political stability.
That's another reason. And a very valid reason.
Very valid reason.
But at the same time, I think we ought to make it just as popular for Americans to invest in their own country as it is for anyone else.
So, for instance, eliminate the business tax. I agree.
Well, we have practically done that, and I don't know that that's changed the direction.
Come on. We had $70 billion worth of income from business tax last year. I can say we eliminated it. There are a lot of loopholes, that's true. And there are people struggling to do away with them, but there are very few politicians I can hear of who say, just do away with it. And that certainly encouraged. How many politicians have said, stop all taxation on savings? Would you be in favor of that?
Well, I would like to see an enhancement of savings, incentives for savings.
That would be one way to do it, wouldn't it?
Well, I don't know if you have to go that far, but I think you have to certainly go to the point of giving some incentive for certain socially protective goals for the nation. The security interest of the nation
It's
is
a direct question. Give me a
jeopardized.
direct answer. If you put $1,000 in the bank, we tax the proceeds from that. In Japan, they don't. Now, isn't that a clear economic advantage that Japan has over us to increase savings?
In Texas, we don't tax that income.
Well, you don't have an income tax at all in Texas.
That's exactly right. We're not going to have one.
I congratulate you on that.
Thank you.
We don't in Connecticut either. Aren't you going to congratulate me?
Yes, sir. Congratulations. Did you have a lot to do with it?
We have a 13% tax on unearned income. Do you have any tax on unearned income?
We don't have any tax on unearned
Let me say, in fairness to the
no
governor,
income tax.
that he is a low-tax man. Texas is a low-tax state, and I think that Texas is a living argument for the kinds of arguments that are reduced at the national level about the effect of lowered tax rates to increase initiative and economic expansion, which is just what Reagan is doing, I think.
Thank you, Mr. William Murchison of the Dallas Morning News. Thank you, Governor Mark White of Texas. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Fun.
See, how do you do?
Isn't Dad coming?
Juana.
Hap, I could never make that.
Oh, Biff, I remember the time that idea would never come into your head. Where's the old confidence?
Listen, I just saw...
Wait a minute, please. I got to see the old confidence. Now, Biff, you want her. She's on call.
No.
I'm telling you, watch this. Honey? Are you busy?
Well, I am. But I could make a phone call.
Oh, do that, would you, honey? And see if you can get a friend, huh? We'll be here for a while. Biff, one of the greatest football players in the country.
Well, I'm certainly happy to meet you.
Yeah, we'll come back soon.
I'll try.
Oh, don't try, honey. Try hard. Hmm? Oh, isn't that a shame? Beautiful girl like that, that's why I can't get married.
Hap, look.
Hey, I told you she's on call.
Cut it out, will you? I want to say something.
All right, so, did you see Oliver?
Yeah, I saw him all right, and I want to tell Dad a couple things, and I want you to help me.
Is he gonna back you?
Are you crazy? You're out of your head, do you know that?
Why? What happened?
I did a terrible thing today, Hap. It's been it's the strangest day I ever went through. I'm all numb, I swear.
What do you mean, he wouldn't see you?
I waited 6 hours for him, see? All day I kept sending my name in, even tried to date his secretary, so she got me through to him, but not so.
Yeah, that's because you're not showing the old confidence, but now he remembered you, didn't he?
And finally, about 5 o'clock, he comes out. Didn't remember who the hell I was or anything.
Biff, did you tell him my Florida idea?
Happy walked away. I saw him for 1 minute. I got so mad I could have torn the walls down. I mean, how the hell did I ever get the idea that I was a salesman there? I even believed myself that I'd been a salesman for him, and then he gave me one look, and I realized what a ridiculous lie. My whole life has been, we have been talking in a dream for 15 years. I was a shipping clerk.
What did you do?
He left, see, and his secretary went out, and I was alone in the waiting room. And next thing I know, I was in his office. Panel walls and everything, and I can't explain it, Hap. I took his fountain pen.
Jeez. Did he catch you?
I ran out. I ran down all 11 flights. I ran.
Boy, oh boy, that was dumb, Biff. Why did you do that?
I don't know. I just wanted to take something. You gotta help me, Hap. I want to tell Pop.
What, are you crazy? What for?
Hap, he's gotta understand that I'm not the man that somebody lends that kind of money to. I mean, he thinks I've been spiting him all these years, and it's eating him up.
Yeah, that's just it. You tell him something nice. You say you got a lunch date with Oliver tomorrow.
So what do I do tomorrow?
Now, look, Dad is never so happy as when he's looking forward to something, huh?
Oh, gee, I haven't been here in years.
Sit down, Pop. You want a drink?
Sure, I don't mind.
Let's get a load on.
You look worried.
No. Scott's all around. Make it double.
Yeah, a couple already, didn't you? Well, what happened, boy? Everything go all right?
Al, I had an experience today.
Terrific. Sure, what happened?
Well, I want to tell you everything from first to last. It's been a strange day. I had to wait quite a while for him.
Oliver.
Yeah, Oliver. All day, as a matter of cold fact. And a lot of instances, Pop. Facts about my life came back to me. Who was it, Pop? Who was it ever said I was a salesman with Oliver?
Well, you were.
No, Dad, I was a shipping clerk, Dad. I don't know who said it first, but I was never a salesman for Bill Oliver.
What are you talking
Look,
about?
just hold on to the facts tonight, Pop. We're not going to get anywhere bulling around. I was a shipping clerk.
All right, now listen
Dad,
to
why
me.
don't you let me finish?
I'm not interested in stories about the past or any crap of that kind because the woods are burning. Boys, you understand me? There's a big blaze going on all around. I was fired today.
How could you?
I was fired. And I'm looking for a little good news to tell your mother because the woman has waited and the woman has suffered.
But, Dad...
The gist of it is, Biff, I haven't got a story left in my head, so don't give me a lecture about facts and aspects. I am not interested now. What have you got to say to me, huh? Did you see Oliver? Huh?
Jeez, Dad.
You mean you didn't go up there?
Sure he went up there, Pop.
Dad, I did. I saw him. How could they fire him?
What kind of a welcome did he give you?
He won't even let you work on commission?
I'm out, so tell me, he gave you a warm welcome?
Sure, Pop, sure.
I was wondering if you'd remember you. Imagine the man doesn't see him in 10, 12 years and he gives him that kind of a welcome.
damn
You know
right.
why I remember you, don't you? Because you impressed him in those
Dad, can we
days.
talk quietly and get this down to the
Well, what
facts?
happened? It's great news, Biff. Tell me, did he take you to his office or did you talk in the waiting room?
Well, he came
What
in-
did he say? I bet he threw his arms around
Well,
you.
he came
Oh,
in-
he's a fine man. He's a very hard man to see.
Oh, I know that.
Is that where you had the drinks?
Yeah, he gave me...
He told him my Florida idea. Don't interrupt. How did he react to the Florida
Dad, will you
idea?
please give me a minute to explain?
I've been waiting for you to explain since I sat down here. What
know.
happened? He took you into his office and what?
Well, I talked. He listened.
Always famous for the way he listens. What was his answer?
His answer. Dad, you're not letting me tell you what I want to tell you.
You didn't see him, did you?
I did see
When you insult him or something, you insulted him, didn't you?
Dad,
huh?
you let me out of it. Will you just let me
Hey,
out?
Biff, tell me what happened.
I can't talk. Will you please tell him what happened? Shut up and leave me alone.
No. You had to go and flunk math.
Dad, what? Mrs. Sloman. Did you talk?
Math.
Take it easy, pal. Miss Sloman.
If you hadn't have flunked, you've been sent.
Dad, no, I'm going to tell you what happened, and you're going to listen to me. I waited 6 hours.
You say it, Biff.
Yeah, I kept sending my name in, Dad, but he wouldn't see me, so finally he came.
Biff flunk math. No.
We're about flunked him. They won't graduate.
Where is he?
No, left. Went to Grand Central.
You mean he went to Boston?
Is Uncle Willie in Boston? See, so I'm washed up with Oliver, Pop. You understand, Dad? Are you listening to me?
Yeah, sure. If you hadn't have flunked,
Dad, flunked what?
Oh, don't blame everything on me. I didn't flunk math. You did. What pen?
Yeah, that was dumb, Biff. A pen like that.
You took Oliver's pen.
Dad, I just explained it to
You stole Bill Oliver's fountain pen.
I didn't exactly steal it, Pop. That's just what I was trying
Pop,
to
he
tell
had
you.
it in his hand, but just then Oliver walked in, he got nervous, and he stuck it in his pocket.
My God, Biff.
I never intended to do it, Dad.
I'm not in my room.
Ringing Mr. Loman.
I'm not there. Now stop it.
Mr. Loman.
I'm no good, Dad.
I'm not there.
Shall I pay you?
No, you're no good.
I am, Dad.
You're no good for
But,
anything.
Dad, I'll find something else. Don't worry about anything, Pop. Talk to me. I'll make
Paging
good,
Mr.
Dad.
No.
Strike something, Pop, please.
No.
Listen, Dad, I'm telling you something good. Oliver talked to his partner about the Floyd ID. You listening, Dad?
Yeah.
Dad?
Yeah.
He talked to his partner, and he came to me, and I'm gonna be all right, Pop, because he said it's just a question of the amount.
Then you got it.
Oh, he's going to be terrific.
Oh, then you got it, haven't you? You got it, haven't you?
No,
You
see,
got it.
I'm supposed to have lunch with him tomorrow, Dad. I'm just telling you this so that you'll know I can still make an impression, Pop, and I'll make good somewheres, but I can't go tomorrow.
Why not? You simply...
The pen, Pop.
Oh, you give him the pen, you tell him what's an
Sure,
oversight.
Biff, you have lunch tomorrow.
I can't say.
You were doing a crossword puzzle. You accidentally used his pen.
No, listen, kid. I took those balls years ago, Pop, and now I walk in with this fountain pen that cleans Prince is it. Don't you understand that? I can't face him like that. I'll try elsewhere.
Don't you want to be anything?
But, Pop, how can I go back?
You don't want to be anything. Is that what's behind it?
Dad, don't take it that way. Do you think it was easy walking into that office after what I'd done to him? A team of horses couldn't have dragged me to below.
And why did you go?
Why did I go? Why did I go? Dad, look at you. Look at what's become of you.
Biff, you're gonna go to that lunch
Dad,
tomorrow.
I can't go. I've got no appointment.
Are you spiting me?
Don't take it that way, damn it.
Rotten that old house. Are you spiting me?
Dad, I'm no good. Can't you see what I am?
You're in a restaurant. Now cut it out, both of you.
Oh, someone's at the door, Billy.
Hello, girls. Sit down.
Guess we might as well. This is Letta.
Oh, you missing? What are you doing?
Letta might not be able to stay long.
I gotta get up very early tomorrow. I got jewelry duty. I'm so excited. Were you fellas ever on a jewelry?
No, I've been in front of him. That's my father.
Isn't he cute? Sit down with us, Pop.
Yeah, sure, Biff, sit him down now.
Come on, Slugger, sit down.
Will?
Come on, drink us something.
Willie, are you coming? Willie, I'm waiting.
Open the door.
What door?
Or the washroom, the door. Where's the door?
Just go straight down.
I did. You stop laughing. You stop. Well, you stop.
I think it's sweet. You bring your daddy along.
Oh, he isn't really your father.
Miss Forsythe, you've just seen a prince walk by. A fine, troubled prince, a hardworking, unappreciated prince. A pal, do you understand? A good companion. Always for his boys.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, well, girls, we're wasting time here. Now, what's the program? Biff, yeah, gather around. Now, where would you like to go? Huh?
Why don't you do something for me?
Me?
Don't you give a damn for him?
What are you talking about, Biff?
I sense it. You don't give a good damn about him. Look what I found in the cellar house. Huh? How can you bear to let that go on?
Oh, yeah, me, huh? Who goes off? Who runs away?
He doesn't mean anything to you, Hap. You could help him. I can't. Hap, don't you understand what he's going to do to himself? He's going to kill himself. Don't you know that?
Don't I know him?
Hap, help him. Help him. Help me. Help me. I can't bear to look at his face.
Biff? Biff, where you
What's
going?
he so mad about?
We're gonna catch up with him.
Say, I don't like that temper of his.
No, he's overstrung.
Don't
That's
you
all. He's
tell
gonna be
your
all right.
father?
No, that's not my father. He's just a guy. Come on, we're gonna catch up with Biff and, oh, honey, we're gonna paint this town. I love those bedroom eyes. Yeah, that's how I knew you were friends.
Mr. Loman! Mr. Loman! Mr. Loman! Hey! Mr. Loman!
Willie.
What?
Willie.
Oh.
Willie, aren't you going to answer the door? Willie, aren't you going to answer the door?
Sure. Oh.
Someone's at the door, Willie. Willie, are you going to answer the door? He's going to wake up the whole hotel.
I'm not expecting anybody.
Why don't you have another drink, honey? Stop being so damn self-centered.
I'm so lonely.
You know, you ruined me, Willie. From now on, whenever you come to the office, I'm going to see you go right through the buyers. No waiting at my desk anymore. Willie, you ruined me.
Oh, that's nice of you to say that.
Oh, gee, you're self-centered. Why so sad? You're the saddest self-centered soul I ever did see, so...
Oh, boy. Boy, oh, boy, oh, boy.
Oh, silly to be dressing in the middle of the night. Aren't you going to answer the door?
Oh, they're knocking on the wrong door.
But I felt the knocking and you heard us talking. Maybe the hotel's on fire.
It's a mistake.
And tell him to go away.
There's nobody there.
Willie. It's getting on my nerves. There's somebody standing there and it's getting on my nerves.
All right. Stay in the bathroom here. And don't come out. I think there's a law in Massachusetts about it, so don't come out. It may be the new room clerk. He looked very mean. It's a mistake. There's no fine.
didn't you answer?
Biff, what are you doing in Boston?
Dad, why didn't you answer? I was knocking for 5 minutes. I called you on the phone.
I just heard you. I was in the bathroom and had the door shut. Did anything happen home? Huh?
Dad, I let you down.
What do you mean? Biff, what's this about? Come on, let's go downstairs and get you a malt. What?
I flunked math.
Not for the term.
The term, I haven't got enough credits to graduate.
You mean to say that Bernard wouldn't give you the answers?
Pop, he did. He tried, but I only got a 61.
And they wouldn't give you full points?
Dad, that Birnbaum refused, absolutely. Pop, I begged him to give me those points, but he won't listen to me. You gotta talk to him, Dad, before they close the school, because if he saw the kind of man that you are and you talk to him in your way, I'm sure he'd come through for me, Pop. See, the class came right before practice, so I didn't go enough. Would you talk to him, Dad? I know he'd like you. You know the way he could talk.
You're on. We'll drive right back.
Dad, good work. All right. I'm sure he'll change it.
Hurry downstairs and tell the coach I'm checking out. Go right down.
Oh, see, Pop, the reason he hates me is one day he was late for class, so I got up at the blackboard and imitated him.